that's my job. I see that now. That's why, right? I'm here to initiate, right, the populace, right, to bring everyone up, right, to help you understand, right, that the mind is non-local, right, that there is no dead space, right, there is inert space, right, but it is not dead, right, it is permeated, right, with the perfect nested hologram of all strata convocations of manifested reality, as well as the conscious expressive thought force of deity of God the Father, right? And so that conscious awareness, right, is the celestial zephyr. It is a cosmic psychic pressure which mutates that static perfection of the hologram into the crepuscular shadows that we experience as measurable reality, right? And so, as it pertains to Quentin, right, you localize your individuality elsewhere. And if you are wise, right, if you know what you're looking at, right, the mind will reveal the location, right, what's being said, what's being done, right? This is because the mind is everywhere. That's the point, right? And so in the spirit of that, right, now we'll discuss this book that I've been reading for a moment, which I found in the trash, sorting trash. What is Light, right? Written by a Dutch scientist in the 70s. What is light? Right? And so, despite the fact that that book was written in the 70s, right? We have to talk about something that was discovered in the 20s or the teens even, right? By Niels Bohr, right? By the godfathers, the progenitors of the quantum model, right? Of quantum mechanics. That they found this peculiar condition called the trouble with measurement. Right? That they said, oh, light has this weird sort of quality to it. We don't know. Like, I can't. Right? When we're not looking at it, it behaves as a wave, right? That it's smeared, right? It's like spread out into an area, right? Into a volumetric area, right? But then, right, when you observe it, right, when you look at it, right, it collapses into a corpuscular photon, right? It collapses into a particle, right? And so this is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, right? Like this is what he's talking about, right? This is why Walter White decided on him as an alias in Breaking Bad, because Vince Gilligan's a smart guy, right? Heisenberg's uncertainty principle says that you can never know with absolute certainty how fast a particle is going and what direction it is traveling in, right? That it's always a ratio. You sacrifice the validity of one measurement for the validity of the other, right? That something is either moving, right? Or it is solid, right? That it's not, there's never a solid moving something, right? And so this is the trouble with measurement. And so my point now, right, my point, guardian angel of the world, right, is that God exists as an abstraction in every cubic centimeter of space, right? And that hologram is a perfectly nested quantum potential, right? That everything is an abstract, right, waveform potential, right? And through the conscious pressure of God's knowing, God's omniscience, pushing its motion through, right, the quantum waveform, it collapses it and mutates it, right, out of a probability into what we perceive as a crepuscular solid fucking table that this computer is on right now, right? That's the point, right? That's the point. Right? And so when you push your thoughts out, right? When you say, oh, I want to see the edges of what my mind can achieve, right? The reality is that if you actually are wise, your mind has no limitations because mind has no limitation, right? Any limitation does not exist. That's the point, right? Everything that exists is a reflection of a psychic pressure upon a static, perfect, quantum potential wave field. Right? That everything resides within itself, and it's through the conscious pressure of the conscious field that we see manifested reality emerge. And so that's what the psychic clairvoyant does in his mind, right? That's what the sorcerer does, right? That's what the voodoo practitioner does, right? That they're fracturing the hologram, right, of the victim, right? And mutating it to serve the end of their will, of their desire, of their intention. Right? This is Aleister Crowley's point when he says, will is the law, right? Do as thou wilt, will is the law, right? Liber 777, right? That this is what he's talking about, right? That reductionist materialistic science says, oh no, it doesn't matter how those protein chains build inside of cells. There is no, right? There's only consciousness in man. Right, that's all. Right? And so what I'm saying is that's an ignorant, arrogant supposition. Right? There's an adolescent level, right? That there's a level of understanding, right? When you're brought to church, right, as a child, right? And the preacher says fire and brimstone things to put you in some sort of fear of some sort of, overarching, judgmental, grandfather, Zeus in the clouds type, right? And that is an amateur, childish understanding of reality, right? This is dogmatic indoctrination designed to make people pay taxes, right? That's the point. We have to liberate, right? We have to elevate our understanding, right, of what life actually is, right? And it is an intellectual reflex, right? Right? Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike. God is not a jealous God, right? God is not a vengeful God. God is not a wrathful God, right? These are all, right? These are logical fallacies which emerge through the psychology of the human author of those books, right? That's the actual condition, right? That God, right, is an abstract intellectual principle, right? Which is the conscious exertion of pressure upon, right, the quantum probability waveform of all of creation, right? And so I'm getting a phone call, 1 second. Right? And so this is what any psychic is doing, right? And so when you meditate on these forms, right, when I bring this back, right, when you meditate, right, on these forms, right, that you're pulling, right, you're bringing into you, right, it's like a relay, right, it's a rebounding upon itself, right, that the conscious field is comprised of these, which are abstract quantum manifolds, which are corrupted through consciousness into manifestation, right, that this is how the world comes into being. Right? There is no other way. Right? You can say that life is an accident, which is equally valid intellectually. However, it's shallow and bears no real weight intellectually.